Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Kira Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
All right. You ready to rock and roll?
Steve, I was born ready. Let's do it.
Dave McAlvany on the Riderflex podcast. Hello, Dave. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to join you.
Are you in Durango or are you traveling? You somewhere else?
Fortunately, today in Durango. Yeah, we've had some travel to Iceland and to Florida, and we've been on the road a lot lately, but back in town. Glad to be here.
Are you between, are you North Durango? Whereabouts? Because it gets south of Durango gets uglier fast, but north of Durango is pretty fast, right?
We're pretty much right in town. And we kind of live our life between town and the mountain. You know, Purgatory is our ski area, and everybody has different feelings about the snow falling. Some people hate it when it gets cold and dream of retirement someplace warm. I can't imagine a year without the snow falling and getting out and skiing. That's one of our favorite family practices. We're out every Saturday and occasionally on Sunday. So
that's wonderful. I am a huge outdoor camping mountain guy. I go probably 15, 20 times a year, either in my Jeep solo, or when my wife goes, we'll take the RV because she prefers not to be without her toilet seat. But I'm a big mountain guy. Unfortunately, I live closer to Fort Collins, so I go northwest usually, and then closer to the Wyoming border, just because traffic and it's easier. However, where you're at is absolutely beautiful, more beautiful, and that's where I would go if I didn't have to go 6 hours to get there.
I mean, this is a classic weekend. This last weekend, everybody wants to sleep in, and I'm usually an early riser. So I hopped on my motorcycle, went up to the Engineer Mountain trailhead, because there's about 2 miles in, there's a place where we love to pick mushrooms, and chanterelles last year were just unbelievable. We thought maybe we'd do that on Sunday. I was just checking it out, got a motorcycle ride in, got a trail run in and out, nothing there, totally skunked. And then just kept going on the motorcycle north of Silverton. If you've spent any time in a Jeep, these are some of the best Jeep roads around north of Silverton. So we got to pound some of that well, it's just beautiful. Yeah. Lights go from the precipitation we've been getting up on the peaks, leaves beginning to change, crispness in the air. It was perfect.
It's absolutely my favorite. By the way, for the listeners, we're recording this on September 19th, 2023. It is that what I call the Super Bowl moment time for the mountains for me, because the bugs are pretty much gone, but the snow hasn't hit yet. Some of the leaves are starting to change. Just like you said, that little hint in the air. It's like right now is the moment, right? So you tell me about your family, wife, kids. Tell me what's going on there, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. Married for coming up on 24 years and got 4 kids.
Nice.
Teenagers, getting one of them getting ready to go to college, on down to a 9-year-old. We've raised them here in Colorado, and our clients are all over the country. So we do travel quite a bit for
Okay.
business, and probably 25,000 clients around the country. And, so to spend time with them on the road is a lot of fun. They've been to every zoo in every city in the country practically. So
That's great.
um, make sure we stay together when we're on the road.
24 years married. Hell, you look pretty young. I mean, what would you get married when you were 18? I mean, geez.
I'm coming up on 50. I'll be 49 this
Wow.
year.
Wow. Okay. Let me zoom in. You don't look 50. You look pretty good, man. You must be, are you, you look like you're in great shape. What's your exercise routine? Walk us through that. What are you doing there?
The last decade, I've done a lot of triathlons. I'll do 2 or 3 a year, typically half Ironmans, and they keep me focused. They keep me definitely disciplined. And it's not the kind of, I had to choose a distance that I couldn't do off the couch. So that it forces the daily discipline. This year's going to be a little bit different. I'm hanging up the cleats for a little bit. My boys asked if I'd lift weights with them, and I've got a graduating senior and sophomore, and what am I doing out running around and being on a bike on the weekend when my boys are like, "Hey, Dad, would you spend time with us, and would you lift weights? Show us how." Like,
Well, I mean,
okay.
hey, yeah.
So
Okay.
that's
Yes.
going to be my new routine. I don't spend a lot of time in the gym, but that's about to change.
If your teenagers say, Dad, will you spend time with us? Like, yeah, you better grab that, because
Done.
that's not normal. That must speak to your relationship with your boys or your kids. I mean, yeah, that's special, because you don't get, most of the time when they're that age, they're trying to go the opposite direction wherever you're at.
Yeah, there's ebbs and flows in every relationship. And I mean, they're great kids. And some days are amazing and some days are amazingly hard. But yeah, I think, the focus on family culture has been really critical for my wife and I. So much so that back in 2017, I wrote a book on it. And, we've been in the financial services industry for 50 years. And it just seems like it's our family business. So not just me. I didn't start when I was, in utero. Second generation family business.
Yes.
So the what seems to be missing is the proper curation of family life and culture.
Totally.
And so little decisions that add up to sort of the major themes. I'll give you an example. Guys' night on Thursday is, me and the 3 boys. This last week we were playing Texas Hold'em with a gazillion nickels, and we just had a great time. So to me, it's if we can laugh together, if we can adventure together, if we can travel together, if we can feast together, then there's something that's happened to our hearts that frankly is far more important than how much money I make and leave to this caboodle of kids. I mean, I would love to do that. But I think more broadly defining legacy is important, and seeing that the resources that we manage aren't just physical, tangible, but there's some intangibles that have to be factored in too. So, I mean, everybody gets to choose how they engage in relationship. And I've got 4 chiefs who can all, tell me to go pound stand. They have no interest or whatever, but thus far, there's reasonable responsiveness and engagement in relationship, which I'm super, super happy about.
That's wonderful. Tell me, so second generation family business. Let's learn about mom, dad, if you don't mind, and maybe any siblings.
Yeah. So family of 4 kids. I'm the only one in the family that had an interest in the business. I had a brother that moved to Indonesia to surf and play and start little micro entrepreneurial ventures. A sister who remarkably has had 9 kids and just has an amazing family out in Alabama. A younger sister who's single, living in Southern California, and an awesome human being. She's my favorite running partner in the world. And so the 4 of us were raised in Denver. And my dad worked for Betcher and Company, which is also kind of a Denver company, and worked as a stockbroker. They did a lot of municipal bond underwriting. And what had his attention in the late 60s and early 70s was this issue very similar to now, of massive government spending. By the way, we passed 33 trillion in government debt this week. And, you know, the inflationary expectations that the market began to see. And so, you know, there's Betcher, you know, selling a lot of muni bonds. Bonds have got some vulnerability with inflation and the potential for higher rates.
Okay.
And there was really no way to hedge that risk because it was illegal to own gold.
What year was that? What year?
1968 through about 70. Well, I mean, it was legalized January 1st, 1975. And, you know, my dad was a part of a small group, professional group that worked with Senator Jesse Helms' office to change the legislation, make it possible. So
nice. Cool.
Actually had a first mover advantage in the marketplace because we found a loophole in 72. So we're 3 years into the bullion business and showing Wall Street firms how to get this done. Of course, they didn't have a gold desk. So we were basically like a white label for them. We were a wholesale provider, a gold trading desk for hundreds of Wall Street firms.
Now I had a visual of your dad hoarding and hiding real gold in a basement somewhere. And then once he helped it get legal, he brought it out of the basement and took it somewhere. I'm just joking, but that's my visual.
Well, what was interesting is, you know, you couldn't hoard or hold. We had a two-tier monetary system where, in order to maintain credibility with our foreign creditors, gold was still a part of the U.S. monetary system, but that was only for international trade settlement, international debt settlement. Domestically, you couldn't own it. That allowed them to inflate the currency. And like coming out of the 1930s, you know, we had a massive hemorrhaging in the stock market, banking crisis. And the argument was, well, we just don't have enough liquidity. Let's print as much money as you can. Nope, full stop. Can't do that as long as you're on a gold standard. That's why they created a two-tier system so that they could inflate domestically, but maintain legitimacy and stability internationally with their foreign creditors. So reputation stayed intact. But
is that why, and I'm going to ask you some commoner questions. So you have to excuse my language and questions. I'm not an expert on the topic. Is that why Nixon, was it right? Am I right? Nixon eliminated the gold standard so we could just start printing money whenever we needed it?
It's a little different, but it's a great question. 1971 was kind of the end of the line. He drew a line in the sand with, you know, like the Bank of France and other folks that we owed money to internationally. Coming out of World War II, we created a world monetary system, a global monetary system that focused on the US dollar. Who was better prepared to do it? You know, Europe had been obliterated. Pound sterling had been the world's reserve currency prior to this, but they were a shadow of their former selves, right? So we convened all the world central banks and leaders in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, big hotel there. And we basically said, it's our way or the highway. And we wrote our own script, wrote ourselves into it. We took the lead role. Dollar is the key currency of the world. And we made the case. Look, we've got so much gold and we're in such a good position financially. Anytime you want, we owe you money. You just tell us. You want dollars, we'll send them. You want gold, we'll send them. It's the same thing. Our currency is as good as gold. Well, fast forward to the 1960s, and we get through, you know, the guns and butter policies of the Johnson administration, like massive fiscal spends. We're at war in Vietnam. We're coming out of that. You know, we're trying to pay for everything for everyone from a social, program standpoint. And our foreign creditors start looking and saying, the dollar is not as good as gold. We'll take the gold, please. And so for a long time, it was like this game of poker. It's like, all right, I told you as good as gold. It is. But we reached a point, 1968, when the US administration wrote to France and said, stop it. If you want to remain a friend of America, you will take greenbacks. Friend of America was actually in the letter. If you want to remain a friend of America, you'll take gold. So they kept on taking gold instead, and took our hoard from what was close to 27,000 tons down to about 8,000 to 9,000 tons. That's a lot of gold leaving U.S. vaults. Nixon closed the gold window, separated the U.S. dollar from gold, and now anytime we owe somebody, we just print the money.
We just print the money.
Spin it in the back, call it good.
What does that mean? Now we're about to go down a rabbit hole. I want to come back to your dad and mom for a second, but one more question. What does that does that really mean that the dollar isn't worth anything besides what we say it's worth? How do I even wrap my head around that? It's just this paper that we're just printing whenever we want to. Like, how does it have real value?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth the paper and ink it's printed on, really. and it's set up as a Federal Reserve note, so it's a non-interest bearing note of the Federal Reserve, and the value of any debt instrument, this non-interest bearing note, is tied to the reputation of the institution you're talking about. So if the Fed has a great reputation, the dollar's worth something. If the Fed does not have a good reputation, then the dollar's value goes down and it buys less and less. We're watching that happen right now with the Chinese currency and the Japanese currency. Right. Their central banks are losing credibility. Their currencies have been depreciating all year, and they're at really critical levels. The US dollar, you could argue, has been abused, and US dollar holders abused too, because since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, 99% of its purchasing power is gone.
Wow. All the more reason people
another
should
rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, it's totally okay though. It's a fascinating topic, especially for a guy like me that knows a little bit, but not much. And I'm assuming most of my listeners are not as educated as you are on the topic, so it'll be fascinating for them too. All the more reason to invest in gold and silver, which is, by the way, one of the things you do.
It's, 1972 is when my parents started the gold brokerage business. We've iterated and changed through time. We were the first company to put physical metals into an IRA back in the mid 80s.
Cool.
And, more recently, we have a savings tool called Vaulted, which allows for people, if you've got too much in the bank, don't want it in US dollars, you can treat that as an ounce allocation. Great way to do it.
And by the way, for the listeners, Vaulted, I checked out the app. It's Android and iPhone both, right? It's available, Play Store, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. I was looking at the app earlier today. So for those people interested, you can check out the app for sure. Is your mom or dad still with us? Are they gone, or where are they passed, or?
They are more than hanging on. In 2008, we started to transition the business, and my dad, a couple of years before that, had invited me onto the executive committee, and I came back from working at Morgan Stanley in 2003.
Good experience.
So about 3 years later, I am on the executive committee. 2 years after that, 2008, my dad says, "Look, we're moving to Asia, and you get to manage this beast." So they had been involved with a number of orphanages in Malaysia, where else? Indonesia, India, Myanmar, and the Philippines. And so they ended up going to the Philippines. They live right next to one of the orphanages that they work with. And then they're just there to encourage the staff at each of the homes, bring in best practices from a business and accounting standpoint, just so that there's more transparency about dollars that come in and dollars go out. And my dad's pretty keen on helping get those homes into a place where they're self-sustaining. So it might be like helping fund a piggery, which then is sort of source of protein, or fish farm, or hydroponic, gardening, or there's a whole bunch of things that they've done. The one in the Philippines, actually, most of the expenses are covered from a rice drying business that they started. And they bring in all the rice from about a 10 square mile area. And rather than having it like out on a paddy drying in the sun, it goes into a tumbler. And, so they're like a communal hub because of their rice drying business, but that covers, the kids' room and board, and it covers their education, all that kind of stuff.
Do they miss the grandkids? I'm guessing. How's your mom do with that?
No, it's we get to spend a couple weeks with them a year. We usually meet up with them. We've found it's better to vacation with them than for them to come back to Colorado, where, there might be, who knows, 20, 50, however many people want to get a piece of their time when they're in town. And even if they're staying with us, we end up 3 dinners and really no time. So we'll travel with them, spend 10 days to 2 weeks just hanging out and adventuring. And that's been the better time spend.
That's,
given
that's
their
great.
commitment. You know,
Now you,
I think it is hard for them. On the other hand, you can ask yourself the question, if you retire, what is your purpose? And,
yes,
for you to have an expectation of them, like, sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, maybe, if they were living in the deep South, shucking pecans, or, working for a hole in one on the golf course, they're people of action. They
mm,
love investing in lives. And, they put their 4 through college, and they put another 25 through college after us. And they're just going to keep on cranking on that kind of stuff
that's great.
until the day they die.
That's awesome.
And, no regrets, man and woman of action. And it's pretty cool to see. So we miss them. But on the other hand, I look ahead and I say, well, what do I want my life to look like?
Yeah.
Do I, how will I define purpose? I think all of us will define it a little bit differently. But it's a really reasonable question to ask as you consider a long-term exit from a business.
What a great point. And I can relate. So I'm 56. All 4 of our kids are out of the house. I have 2 granddaughters. And I will tell you from personal experience, and for anybody listening, you definitely go through an adjustment period. I remember when our last child left for school, David, it was for 6 months. I was trying to find myself, so to speak. I'm like, okay, now what? now what do I do? Right. Now what's my purpose? And I'll never forget, just tell this really quick story. My wife was working late. She wasn't home for whatever reason. And it was a Friday. And earlier that day, I had tried to scramble. I'll never forget this. I was trying to scramble to gather happy hour or schedule happy hour with a couple of buddies or whatever. And I kept calling people. Nobody was available. Everybody was busy. So I couldn't get anything worked out. And my wife wasn't there. And I will not forget this. I was about 6:45, 7:00. I'm sitting on my couch in my living room. It's quiet. There's nobody home. And all I can hear is the clock ticking. And I'm sitting there. We were talking about bourbon earlier. And I had a little glass of bourbon. And I will never forget thinking, man, okay, is this it? Like, this now what? Like, this is it? What do I do? It took me a while, but my wife and I have transitioned now into having hobbies and things that we do and trying to find purpose. But, and I think it's very important to do that. So I couldn't agree more, to find some sort of passion or something you're chasing and experiences you're chasing, because it's a different life. So I can relate. We're now, you strike me as the young man that was always on the straight and narrow. Did you ever get in any trouble? Did you ever venture out at all? Were rebel? I mean, were you just like straight A's? I'm at the library every day. I'm going to church 3 times a week. I mean, give us something, Dave. Come on, give us something.
I ran away when I was 14.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that's a good one. All right.
I was away from home, including being sent away thereafter. To Boys Ranch for about a year.
Ooh,
So between running away and drug rehab and the Boys Ranch out in Arkansas, no, I don't think I was always on the straight and narrow. I think what dawned on me, we all have pain in our lives, and
yes.
a lot of what happened, so 14 to 16, was an expression of disappointment, pain, anger. Losing my grandfather unexpectedly, my dad traveling 3 out of 4 weeks, and building our business from an early sort of stage. So, there was, I played as one of the mini mites at DU. We practiced at the DU ice arena all the time. I played ice hockey growing up.
That's
and my dad was the dad who was never there.
fun.
And so, I just, there was enough going on by the time I was 14 that I was just kind of pissed about life and everything. And, but it's an expression. When you're angry, it's generally an expression of pain.
True. Yep.
When I came back from Arkansas, there was a series of events. I put it in chapter 1 in the book, The Intentional Legacy. And it really was the turning point for me, Steve. I think that as I look back, I had sort of an encounter with forgiveness, a grave offense with my dad, and his willingness to forgive me, that really it broke my heart, broke me down.
Mm.
and had me asking questions. Is this really where I want to go? Is this really what I want to do? I think the pendulum swang back pretty hard from sort of libertine to now somebody who's probably a little bit more straight-laced. But I felt like there was years that I had wasted, and I just wanted the time back. And it dawned on me even at a young age, time's going to run out. You
Yeah.
better use what you got.
Mm. Was there a moment when you were in Arkansas at the school or and you're like, Dad, please come get me, please, please. Or mom, please come get me.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was one of those weird things. The reason I ended up at the youth ranch was because, and by the way, I didn't have a major drug problem, but my parents didn't know that. So they sent me to this counseling center and drug rehab.
I see.
And I was there for like 45 days, and they showed up, we did some group counseling, and they had a 27-page contract for me to sign to come home. And I misread the room completely, Steve. I thought, they want me to come home. There's no way I'm signing this. I'm not going to see my friends in Denver. I'm not going to, all these people, they like shortlisted, no more contact, no more contact. And these were the conditions of coming home. And I was like, forget it. Somehow I thought I had leverage. 2 days later, I'm on a plane to Arkansas. So
that's good stuff. Yeah. That's really good. So I appreciate you sharing that. Well, obviously things worked out, right? Things worked out. You ended up going to school and getting your degree. And what'd you major in college?
Studied philosophy.
Okay. And so at that time, you didn't think you were going to go to work for your dad, I'm guessing.
Absolutely not. No, I had no interest in the gold business. I had no interest in the investment world. I had interest in what drove culture and the values in culture. Philosophy for me was kind of a wormhole into all things. It's like, opening up a toolbox and for the first time having every tool you can imagine to do every project you could ever imagine.
Okay.
And so philosophy is this set of tools that you get to use in reading the evening news, reading a book on literature, looking at a biography, understanding international relations. It's just critical thinking. That's all. When you study philosophy, that's all it is training in critical thinking. But I saw the importance of that, not really caring what I was going to do with it.
Okay.
Of course, about the time you get to your end of your senior year and everybody's already gotten job offers, and the question is, what are you going to do? You're like, I studied philosophy. I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question. What am I going to do next? So I went to work at a study center just outside of Waco, about halfway between Waco and Dallas.
Okay.
And it was a Christian study center where during the summer months they had programs on apologetics and aesthetics. So Christianity and the arts. So they had a variety of poets and songwriters and artists and whatnot come to this week-long thing. Anyways, I'm in the front row and taking notes. I was working there, but taking notes at this particular event, and this gal is talking about the influence of postmodernism on contemporary dance and taking notes. I'm like, I'm not even sure I have an interest in this. Do I have an interest? It's kind of fascinating. It's way over my head. I mean, I've studied postmodernism, but contemporary dance, like how does it? Anyways, I ended up marrying her like 3 years later. There's a lot of details we could fill in, and I'd bore your listeners. She too studied philosophy. And it's been a really beautiful life too.
Now, was your faith strong then? Your Christian based faith, was it strong then, or were you a backslider at that time, as they call it? By the way,
I think when I had that experience of forgiveness from my dad, it was the first time that in my life I could see and understand the value of not getting what I deserved. and there was something about,
Hmm. Hmm.
the notions of spiritual justice, or I don't even know. I mean, I'm not a theologian, so I don't know that I have the words for this, but um, in the Christian conception of salvation, you are missing something,
Hmm.
and and God puts in that place what you're missing, and makes right what was made wrong a long time ago. And I think, I know how to make things wrong. My decisions, I can make a mess of things, and the fact that I'm reinvited into relationship with God, I just didn't appreciate forgiveness. I didn't
Right.
appreciate a gift. I didn't appreciate, and that's what happened when I was 14, 15, that interaction with my dad.
Hmm. Hmm.
So from that point forward, I mean, I was intrigued by strong personalities that made a difference in the world. I remember when I was 15, I was reading Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And if you don't know anything about his life, he's this amazing Christian pastor who, very interestingly, was also a part of a group that was attempting to assassinate Hitler. I mean, you've got these contradictions of, like,
Wow.
you know, there's the love of God, but there's also the very clear stand of what evil is, and that you should stand against it. Like, I as a young man, I thought, how should I see thought and action tied together? And Christianity is one of many ways of bringing about this sort of structure, worldview, and with it pointed towards particular actions.
Hmm. Hmm.
That it's not just a system of belief, but it ultimately drives towards particular actions, of love and of grace and of forgiveness. Anyways, I'm trying to preach here, but I think that I took life a lot more seriously
Okay.
after the year in Arkansas,
Okay.
and after that experience of forgiveness. And I read big books. I mean, from that point forward, it was Bonhoeffer, it was Dostoevsky, it was Shakespeare, on a voluntary basis, just trying to figure out what is who are we, and what
Right.
is the world we live in. And
Hmm.
so, actually, philosophy was a really natural extension for me, once I got to college, because now it was more of not just my search, but there was some guidance added to it, which was helpful.
Want to ask you this question, and we can leave this in or take it out later if you want, but if you don't feel comfortable answering, do you feel like part of the craziness, I call it craziness, that's going on right now with some of the social things happening in the country, do you feel like some of the anger on social media and craziness is because the country over the last 30, 40 years has slowly drifted away from the faith-based family unit of structure, and we've just lost a lot of that, and that has fueled the fire of craziness? I don't know if I'm asking the question properly, but
I think to some degree we've lost touch with reality outside of ourselves.
mm,
And so when you see the world through a very subjective lens, it can be a lens of feeling. It can be a lens of, myopia is where you're unable to see certain things, but you can see other things very well.
mm,
We have a vision problem as a nation, and again, there's just something missing. I think an external reference point, something that does, give you a sense of what are values and what is truth, and what is fairness. I mean, certainly we can have a debate about that if we're talking about social issues, but within the context of business, people still want to be treated with ethics. They want to be treated with honor. They want to be treated with dignity and respect. What is your basis for all of that? Is it pure pragmatism? Is it, do you have a philosophical justification for the way that you treat a client or customer? Treating them with dignity and respect, caring for their needs, right?
mm,
I
mm,
do think that there is a basis in worldview for those things. And to the degree that you eliminate worldview, and we've been taught through, certainly the public schools and certainly, secular universities have this notion that there is no room in the public square for private religious concerns.
Mhm.
And I would say the public square without private religious concerns is a free-for-all, because now you do what you want whenever you want. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more is might makes right. There's power struggles everywhere. Nobody cares about outcomes or true justice. All there is a battle for who has control of the narrative, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that to me is it. We are living in a post-truth world. We're living in a world that doesn't have these key anchors, worldview anchors.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, might makes right. I mean, we've moved into the perfect world of Darwin. I will do what I want to do when I want to do at anyone else's expense, because there is no morality, there is no ethics, because we've already established there is no truth.
Mm.
So if you tell me there is no truth, then just acknowledge that the business universe that we have, like, okay, then we should say yes to WorldCom, we should say yes to Enron, we should say yes to any list of, if you can get away with it, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, what is your justification for operating with ethics?
That is good stuff, my friend. That's good stuff. Really good stuff. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I'm very concerned about, and then we'll get into the business here, but I'm very worried about the control of the narrative from a select group of very powerful organizations, and the ability to spread whatever information they want. It scares the hell out of me, quite frankly. I've watched it over the last few years, and as an old guy, I'm 56. I tell my boys all the time, I said, man, this is a little bit, I'm worried. The amount of control around the flow of information to the human species, that topic will be, already is, and will continue to be a major issue. And I'm worried about it. So I know we could spend like 2 hours on just that topic, but
I mean, in a nutshell, the lead, Lord Acton was the head of the history department at Cambridge University for a bunch of years, and his probably most famous quote is, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." And that's the issue. It doesn't, I mean, even well-intended people, you could look at the history of the Christian church and say, at various points, whether it's Catholicism or Orthodoxy or Protestantism, something breaks down. Why does it break down? Well, if someone has the power, all of a sudden there's this reinforcement and protection of it, and there's corruption that becomes endemic. Didn't start that way.
That's right.
So where we started and where we are, two very different things. But at this point, there's so much of a grasp for power, and narrative control is certainly a part of that. We live in one of the more corrupt periods in human history. But I think that's going back to how the dominoes fell. When you don't have a worldview that governs your decisions, then all it resorts to, can I get away with it? And so, it is just a grab for power.
Yeah, totally.
No surprise at every level.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Good stuff. All right, now let's move into, appreciate you sharing all that. So Dad says, hey, or did you call Dad? Or Dad's like, hey, come help me. What, how did it go?
Yeah, 2003, I was working at Morgan Stanley, and I was back for 2002, December of 2002, came back for Christmas and just said, Dad, I'm thinking about, what would it look like to work in the family business? And he had a couple of different businesses at that point. I wasn't very specific as to which one.
Okay.
And he was kind of dumbfounded, because I had never expressed an interest in it. It was really good that I went and did something else. And I think I would have that expectation today. If any of my kids have an interest in the business, great. Not now. Go do something else.
Agreed. Yep.
Get an education, get some experience. And if you have interest after that, wonderful. If you don't, great. You were supposed to go a different direction anyways.
Mhm.
So that's where I came back and commuted on a weekly basis. We were living in Southern California,
Okay.
and in for the week, back to California for the weekends for about 3 months. I had to see if I could stand working with my dad. I mean, super strong personality. I have 4 kids. They're all chiefs. My dad and mom had 4 kids. We're all chiefs. I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah, totally. I can relate. Interestingly enough, my youngest son is just like me, super type A, super got to be captain of everything, or thinks he, the same, right? Chief. And he wants to work for the family business. So this is just recent. So last week, I have partners in the business, and I said, look, Spence, here's the deal. I'm not going to call them and say, this is what we're doing. You are going to drive down to Denver on your own and meet with the partners, and you're going to sell this to them without me saying, this is how it's going to go down. And if they all approve, then we'll do something. because the whole topic was, I wanted them to meet with, to see if his personality can survive our culture, right? Without he and I killing each other, and how are we gonna do this? I mean, hell, he can't even come over for Thanksgiving dinner without us arguing about how the plates are going to be set on the table or whatever. So yeah, so it's good, but it worked out. So when you tested it, you're like, okay, I can do it.
We did. I mean, we certainly had some consulting and professional counsel.
Okay.
The guy that had done pre-marriage counseling for my wife and I, a very trusted counselor out in California. My dad and I spent some time working through,
Good.
what's this look like? We've got 2 relationships now. It's a father-son relationship. It's also an employee-employer relationship.
Mhm.
And can you set distinctions and boundaries for those where one discussion is clearly one category and one is the other? And it was, I think, going in with a proper framework was helpful. Without a framework, I think we could have really messed things up, and we might not be on very good terms. But we're on excellent terms.
And it's 20 years later, right? And you've kept the business going, made it even bigger, and your relationship with your dad is still healthy. Hey, congratulations.
Now, I will say that the transition was made easier by his desire and my mom's desire to be halfway around the world. So,
Yeah.
Sometimes the business transition gets a little rocky when Gen 1 is looking over Gen 2's shoulder
Yes.
and picking every decision apart and saying, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it.
Yes.
I was very sink or swim. And he told me, he said, look, if the business folds, it folds. It's not my concern anymore. I don't think you're going to let it. I think you're a smart enough guy. And of course, it's like, he knows what motivates me. I will not fail. Right. He gave me enough latitude to fail, which was a means to success.
That's great. Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the biggest mistakes the first generation can make is too much hovering, too much vulture, seagull management, flying around, coming into the office too much, getting in the way of second generation. It just makes it messy. I mean, be there as an advisor, as a mentor, sure. Quarterly board meetings, whatever, but just getting in the way all the time just gonna make it messy. So it's great. That's great that he had that wisdom, and he also moved off. Let's do this. Let's do an overview here of McAlvany Financial Group. And by the way, it's McAlvany.com, McAlvany Financial Group. And I also just want to go back to the listeners and mention this: the Intentional Legacy, available on Amazon, hardcover or audiobook. By the way, is it your voice?
It is. Yeah.
Awesome. You got the voice for it. So that's great. I'm glad you told me that. I would have given you heck if you just had somebody else had recorded it, because you got the radio.
It was an amazing experience. I went down to this recording studio in Austin, Texas, and this guy who'd played guitar with, a dozen rock bands through the years. We go into his studio and he records as we are. I mean, he edits as we record.
Oh.
And we're finished. It's done.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. So it wasn't a painful process. Okay. That's cool.
But I mean, it took a couple of days. So that part did get painful. Your voice gets a little tired. When we needed a break, he'd bust out his guitar. It was amazing.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's cool. That's cool. Is it available everywhere else too? Amazon only? Is it available?
Yeah, that's the best place. Or website, davidmcalvany.com is if you want to order in bulk, you can. And it's discounted through our through the David McAlvany website. McAlvany.com is the best site to kind of get to know who we are, what we do. What you'll find there is access to our asset management company focused on hard assets, all publicly traded companies, but we manage portfolios of stocks focused on real things. So it's global natural resources, precious metals mining companies, specialty real estate, and infrastructure. Those are our 4 areas of focus. There's also, the pathway to our precious metals brokerage company, 51 years in business, 50,000 people, billions of dollars placed with clients all over the country, and a leader in the industry of precious metals IRAs. Vaulted, I don't know if we have vaulted presence on that site or not, but I think if you really want to get to know us, go to the news and information section, because that really is how you get to know how we think about things. I've done a weekly podcast since March of 2008. We're in our 16th year of doing a weekly podcast, and
Wow.
market related. Certainly we're interested in psychology, international relations, public policy. It's not just sort of facts and figures relating to this day's opening and closing stats on the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ. We're interested in the ideas and the context of what's driving the market. Really helpful tool if you're looking for perspective.
McAlvany Weekly Commentary, right? Is that is that the name of the show? McAlvany Weekly Commentary?
That's right.
Okay. And that channel, the channel on YouTube is McAlvany Financial, I think, or is there a different channel for the podcast?
Yeah. Now, if you want to go YouTube, you can. If you want to listen to the podcast on iTunes or other places you listen to podcasts, it's available just about everywhere.
Okay. Well, hey, you got there's quite a few subscribers. Great job. And by the way, you were doing podcasting before it was cool.
Before it was called podcast.
Yeah. Very
that
good.
Language didn't exist 16 years ago.
I can't believe you've been doing it for 16 years. How many times have somebody called you and said, yeah, I'm going to start my own podcast? And you're like, okay, yeah, let me know, because it takes a lot of work and time for you to keep it up that long. Congratulations.
It's 15 or 20 hours a week. I mean,
yes.
but a lot. It's also dense content, and it's fresh content every week. A lot of people have this concept of, I want to create a podcast. I'll have 6 or 8 episodes, and they're kind of shelf pieces. Ours is just modeled differently, and we're trying to solve problems. When we don't have the answers to those problems, we'll reach out to professionals who we think do. That could be a central banker from the European Central Bank, an academic from UC California, Berkeley, a political leader here in the U.S. or in Western or Eastern Europe. We have a pretty wide range of commentary guests, and it's basically, we've taken it as far as we can. Now we have to have someone to talk to about this particular issue, and they've written 3 books on it. They join us, and we kind of unpack the big problems.
Okay, very good. Who's your typical client, your targeted client? How would you describe them?
The typical client is 40 to 60.
Okay.
Knows something about how the world works. Educated, whether that's college educated or not, doesn't matter. They're curious.
Okay.
And interested in the truth. They mainstream media would probably be a disappointment for them. They'd be like, yeah, that's great, facts and figures, but give me analysis. I don't need the same loop over and over again. Why don't you bring on somebody that's going to bring some insight? And that's how we're sort of sympathetic. That's where we connect, at least through the podcast.
Net worth, average net worth, like do they have to be rich to be a client? I mean, talk to me about that. And define rich, I guess that's a vague, I guess we need a definition around that, but they got to have a little bit of cash.
Yeah, we've created a number of different access points. For instance, the Vaulted program, that's the vaulted.com, or you go to the App Store. You can buy and sell gold and silver, and you're buying any dollar amount within a kilo bar or 1,000-ounce bar. You're getting the economy of scale. But if you wanted to have $5 in silver and $5 in gold, that's fine. You can do that, and you don't have to buy the entire bar. $60,000 bar, or $30,000 bar, whatever the price and of those bar may be at a given time. I like the idea of democratizing access to metals, and there being a great access point for that for everyone.
Okay.
Right. So we've got folks on the Vaulted platform that have $5 million, $10 million in the program, and folks that have $20. And I like both. That's the Vaulted program. Typically, if somebody's doing a precious metals IRA with us, they'll have 20, 30 grand at least.
Okay.
And not uncommon for us to see a $500,000 or $1 million 401k rollover in that venue. We're just not, we care about taking care of people, and really don't care how polished your shoes are.
Can you tell us how big your fund is that you manage, or is that something you can share? I don't know.
So it just depends on the kind of which business you're talking about.
Right.
In IRA assets within just the physical precious metals, call it $500 million.
Okay.
In funds that we've delivered to clients in the 50 years we've been in business, probably another $4.5 billion.
Okay.
In money that we manage in our hard asset fund, the publicly traded fund, $100 million. So it just depends on what product.
Very good. Here's a couple of funny questions here as we wrap up. If I buy a $30,000 bar, where is my bar of gold? Where is it physically?
Well, you can do a couple of things. Our bread and butter business is delivery, because people like it in their hand.
Okay. Didn't know that.
The majority of our business, people take delivery of the product. That's not the case if it's an IRA. If it's in an IRA, then it's stored at a depository and it's managed by a trust company. That's what the IRS requires. Treasury Department, if you're going to have an IRA, you got to play by the rules, whether it's a stock account or precious metals.
How would I insure my $30,000 bar? How do I talk to my homeowner's insurance about how does that even work?
Yeah, you could add that to a list of assets that are at your home.
Okay.
If you've got art, it's on the list.
I see.
You take pictures of your art and you'd have it listed as an item. It's insured.
How about that?
Nice thing about gold is it's not destroyed. If your house burned down, if it's stolen, clearly, but if your house burns down, it's just going to take a different form. It might have been a nice bar, and now it looks like a liquid puddle, but it'll firm up.
Are they marked? Here's another common or ignorant question. Are they marked with some sort of number or something to where I know my bar has like a serial code on it or something?
Serial numbered from a hallmark like a Johnson Matthey, Arbor Heraeus, Valcambi, depending on whether it's a U.S. or European bar. But yeah, bars or coins. Just keep it generic, keep it simple. That keeps the costs down. And there is within your, but if you use the Vaulted program, you've got gold in Ottawa, Canada through the Royal Canadian Mint. You've got silver through HSBC in London. The only US entity that has that relationship with HSBC and can provide bars at a retail price structure that reduces 70% of the wholesale costs of delivery. It's an amazing program. Costs are crushed. Accessibility is easy. You can start with virtually nothing. I open an account, dink around with $50 and see what you think. We did a thing called Vault Plan, where out of every payroll, if you want to add $50 or $100, $1,000, whatever, you just kind of routinely add to your gold position.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea. Why, I don't mean to bring up competition, so I don't mean for it to come across this way. Why use Vaulted instead of like E-Trade or whatever?
Yeah. Well, in an E-Trade, you could own something like an exchange traded fund, which would give you, like, GLD and SLV are your gold exchange traded fund ticker symbols. You can buy them as you would buy a stock.
Okay.
The problem is they're not deliverable unless you're taking delivery of over $10 million worth of product. So automatically, there's a distance there.
Okay.
That's really the biggest difference is with our program, you have an allocated, deliverable, physical metal. And
I love it.
If you've only got $1,000, in the program, not enough for a coin or a bar, you can convert it to a smaller product. Maybe it's 1/4 ounce gold eagles or 1/2 ounce gold eagles, and convert it for a product that is deliverable versus, your sort of chip of a kilo bar. You're not going to have that happen.
I
But
see.
great
Okay.
program.
Very good. Well, as soon as I sell Riderflex, our recruiting firm, for several $1,000,000, I'm going to call you, and I'm definitely going to put some of that in gold and silver. I don't know how much, but then I can be an official client. Of course, it sounds to me like I could get vaulted right now and just put in a few thousand if I wanted to, which I did not know before we had this conversation.
No, I mean, $10, just try it out and see what you think
Wow.
about the functionality. It's a really good program. Gold, like real estate, is just another asset to bring diversification to the mix. It's not
Yes.
quite into the stock market, and it does very well during periods of inflation and rising rates. The 1970s is a great example of that, and I think we are in that period where inflation is going to be sticky and rates are going to stay higher longer than most people like. I think we've got a good 3, 5, maybe even 10 years of gold outperforming, and 1900. I think we're getting ready to see a generational repricing, move above 2100. And I think you begin to see some real interesting activity.
Does your volume go up when interest rates for homes go high? Do people move into gold faster and you're busier?
Our volume increases when there's concerns. Think of gold as an insurance policy.
I see. Okay.
If you've neglected having fire insurance, you certainly don't neglect it when there's a fire just over the hill. You're like, I got to talk to an agent. And so there's a sense of urgency when the Russians invade Ukraine, or when COVID kicks in, or when there's volatility in the stock market. 2022, you see a huge interest in gold just because the Nasdaq's off 1/3, the Dow's off 9%, the S&P's off 19%. Investors are like, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have all my eggs in that basket. So it really is kind of a concern-driven asset.
Very good. Very good. Wow. McAlvany.com. David, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you sharing on the Riderflex podcast.
See, we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully it it was not intended to offend.
Nah, I'm sure it won't.
Good to be with you. I'm glad we had the opportunity for candor.